They threw him out of the upscale restaurant like he didn't belong, humiliating him in front of everyone. What they didn't know? He was the rightful owner, the heir to the very legacy they disrespected. What he did next would shock even those who thought they'd seen it all. But let's start from the beginning. It was a crisp Friday evening, and the bustling city outside reflected off the gleaming windows of l'Ambroisie, the crown jewel of upscale French dining. From the street, the restaurant glimmered like a beacon of luxury, its soft golden lighting and immaculate decor visible through the expansive glass panes. Inside, diners adorned in designer suits and elegant dresses spoke in hushed tones over carefully plated masterpieces, their silverware clinking against fine china. The servers, dressed in black and white uniforms, moved with practiced grace, their movements almost choreographed as they weaved between tables with trays of wine and soufflés. The tranquility was suddenly interrupted as the entrance door swung open, allowing a gust of cold air to cut through the warmth inside. Anthony Grant stepped into the foyer, his presence unnoticed at first. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore a clean, casual outfit of dark jeans and a collared shirt, his polished shoes glinting faintly under the soft chandelier light. His deep brown eyes scanned the space, taking in every detail: the crystal chandeliers, the marble floors, and the gilded mirrors that lined the walls. This was his father's dream realized, now transformed into a bastion of exclusivity. But Anthony wasn't there to indulge in the menu. He had come to see what years of leasing the space had done to the restaurant his late father, Elijah Grant, had painstakingly built from nothing. Before he could take a step further, a burly security guard blocked his path. "Sir, we have a dress code," the guard said, his eyes narrowing as they swept over Anthony. His tone was clipped, professional, but carried an unmistakable undertone. "I'll have to ask you to leave." Anthony raised his hands slightly in a calming gesture. "I'm not staying long. Just wanted to take a look." The guard leaned forward, his voice lowering as his expression hardened. "Look, we don't want trouble. Customers are uncomfortable." He gestured toward a couple who quickly turned their gaze away. Before Anthony could respond, the guard grabbed his arm. "Don't touch me," Anthony warned, his voice steady but firm. The guard ignored him. A scuffle ensued, and moments later, Anthony was shoved through the doors and onto the cold sidewalk. The door slammed shut, and Anthony stood there, his cheeks burning with humiliation, as passing pedestrians glanced his way. Shame mingled with a fiery rage in his chest. He turned his back on l'Ambroisie, vowing this wouldn't be the end. Anthony returned home, the chill of the night still clinging to him. His apartment was modest but cozy, filled with reminders of his father, old photographs, a worn chef's apron framed on the wall, and the faint scent of cinnamon lingering from one of Elijah's famous recipes. Anthony dropped his keys on the counter and sank onto the couch, his mind a whirlwind of anger and disbelief. He could still feel the guard's grip on his arm, hear the dismissive tone in his voice. Memories of his father flooded his thoughts. Elijah Grant, the man who had turned a humble dream into a thriving reality. Elijah had worked tirelessly to create l'Ambroisie, a place where everyone, regardless of background, could enjoy good food and great company. Anthony remembered long nights watching his father perfect recipes, his hands dusted with flour and his face glowing with pride. But after Elijah passed, financial pressures had forced Anthony to lease the restaurant to a corporate group. They had promised to honor the family's legacy, yet they had transformed it into an exclusive retreat for the wealthy, erasing the very ideals it was built on. The sharp knock on his door jolted him from his thoughts. Simone, his sister, stepped in, her professional blazer and sharp features exuding confidence. As a respected attorney, Simone was known for her tenacity, and tonight was no exception. "What happened?" she demanded, her tone already simmering with anger. Anthony recounted the night's events, his voice low but steady. When he finished, Simone's expression turned dark with fury. "They kicked you out of Dad's restaurant?" she spat. "They think they can erase the history of this place because they've scrubbed our name off the lease?" Without hesitation, Simone opened her laptop. "We still own the building, and we're going to remind them of that. Let's see how they operate without the foundation they're standing on." The siblings worked late into the night, the soft glow of the screen illuminating their determined faces. Legal documents, ownership records, and correspondence with the corporate group were sifted through meticulously. Anthony's anger transformed into resolve. This wasn't just about reclaiming a building. It was about restoring a legacy, one that stood for unity, resilience, and respect. Together, they would ensure Elijah Grant's dream would not be tarnished by prejudice and greed. On Monday evening, the golden glow of L'Ambroisie spilled onto the street, but the restaurant's usual calm was about to be shattered. Anthony Grant stepped inside, his presence commanding in a perfectly tailored navy suit. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor, drawing attention from nearby diners. He was no longer the man who had been humiliated days before. He was there to reclaim what was rightfully his. At his side was Simone, poised and professional, a thick folder of legal documents clutched in her hand. The security guard at the entrance recognized Anthony immediately and scowled. "You again?" he sneered, stepping forward as if to block his path. "I told you." Anthony cut him off, his voice sharp and resolute. "I'm not here to eat," he said, his cold gaze silencing the guard. "I'm here to speak to the manager." The tension was palpable, diners turning their heads toward the confrontation. Moments later, a man in a tailored blazer, clearly the manager, hurried over, his polished demeanor faltering under the weight of the scene. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his eyes darting between Anthony and Simone. Anthony stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with restrained fury. "The problem," he began, "is that your staff humiliated me in my own property. My father built this restaurant, brick by brick, dream by dream. I own this building, and you," he gestured around the space, "have turned it into a place that would never have welcomed him." A stunned silence swept through the room, broken only by audible gasps from the diners. The manager's face turned pale. I wasn't aware," he stammered. "That's obvious," Simone interjected crisply, lifting the folder of documents. "These are the terms of the lease, which you violated by allowing discriminatory practices. Effective immediately, we're revoking it." The weight of her words landed like a hammer. Anthony turned to the diners, his voice carrying across the room. "My father didn't build this place to divide people. He built it to bring them together. And it's time this restaurant lived up to that vision again." As the realization settled in, the diners exchanged uneasy glances. The manager stood frozen, unable to argue. Anthony and Simone stood tall, the balance of power restored, and the future of L'Ambroisie firmly back in their hands. 2 months later, L'Ambroisie reopened under Anthony's management, rebranded as Elijah's Table in honor of his father. Gone were the pretentious menus and snooty exclusivity. Instead, it became a welcoming space with a menu that blended French cuisine with Southern soul food, a nod to Elijah's heritage. Opening night drew a diverse crowd, from old regulars who remembered Elijah's hospitality to new patrons curious about the buzz. Anthony, standing by the door in a sharp black suit, greeted every guest with a warm smile. The security guard, now replaced by a friendly greeter, was nowhere to be seen. Simone, meanwhile, mingled with guests, ensuring everyone felt at home. As Anthony looked out over the bustling restaurant, he felt a deep sense of pride. His father's legacy was restored, not as a temple of elitism, but as a haven of unity and respect. And in the corner of the dining room, under a framed portrait of Elijah Grant, Anthony sat down with Simone, raising a glass to the past, present, and future of Elijah's table.